On the brisk morning of November 15th, 1977, a cry was heard from the Lindo wing of St. Mary's Hospital that sent a ripple of joy across a nation. Princess Anne, the Queen's only daughter, had given birth to a healthy baby boy. He was Queen Elizabeth II's first grandchild, fifth in the line of succession to the British throne. Across London, at the historic Tower, a 41-gun salute thundered in celebration, the ancient proclamation of a new royal birth. The world's press gathered, waiting for the inevitable announcement of a name and, more importantly, a title. But then, in a move that stunned the public and quietly defied over 500 years of royal tradition, his parents did the unthinkable. They politely but firmly declined the Queen's offer of a title for her grandson. There would be no earldom, no viscountcy, no His Royal Highness before his name. He would be known simply as Peter Phillips. This single act was the beginning of the royal family's great modern experiment. It was a deliberate, strategic choice to raise a boy born at the very center of the institution, as if he were an outsider. This is the story of that experiment, of the prince who was never a prince. For years, he was seen as the monarchy's ultimate success story, the handsome, discreet, and self-sufficient grandson who seamlessly blended privilege with a common touch. But the tightrope he was forced to walk between these two worlds would prove to be a treacherous one, leading to damaging public scandals, a painful and high-profile divorce, and a life spent grappling with a unique and often isolating identity. This is the story of Peter Phillips and the hidden costs of being the trailblazer for a new kind of royalty. To grasp the audacity of Princess Anne's decision, you must first understand the Britain of 1977. On the surface, it was a year of profound royal celebration. The nation was awash in the pomp and pageantry of the Queen's Silver Jubilee, marking 25 years on the throne. Millions attended street parties, Union Jacks adorned every lamppost, and a wave of genuine public affection for Elizabeth II swept the country. The monarchy, in this moment, seemed as strong and as popular as ever. Princess Anne herself was a superstar, an Olympic equestrian who had competed in the 1976 Montreal Games. She was admired for her grit, her dedication to her patronages, and her famously no-nonsense, often prickly, relationship with the press. But beneath the celebratory veneer, Britain was a nation in turmoil. The economy was faltering under the weight of high inflation and widespread industrial action, a period that would culminate in the infamous Winter of Discontent. While the royal family celebrated in gold carriages, the youth of the nation were finding a new voice in the anarchic snarl of punk rock. The Sex Pistols' anthem, "God Save the Queen," was a declaration of war on the establishment, screaming no future at the very institution Peter Phillips was being born into. It was this stark contrast between ancient tradition and modern rebellion, between national pride and economic anxiety, that formed the backdrop for Peter's birth. Princess Anne, more than any other royal of her generation, seemed to understand that for the monarchy to survive, it had to adapt. She had deliberately married outside the aristocracy, choosing Captain Mark Phillips, a fellow world-class equestrian and a commoner. She saw the immense, lifelong pressure that a royal title had placed upon her brother Charles, and she was determined to spare her children the same fate. Her decision was not a snub to her mother or the institution. It was a fiercely protective and deeply modern act of maternal foresight. The refusal of a title was a quiet bombshell dropped at the heart of the establishment. By tradition, the Queen would have offered to make Mark Phillips an earl, a title which Peter, as his eldest son, would have one day inherited. When Mark declined, the queen then offered a courtesy title for Peter himself. This too was politely refused. The official palace statement was brief, stating it was the couple's personal wish that their children not have titles. But behind this simple statement lay a complex and strategic family decision. For Princess Anne, this was a philosophical stand. She believed that a title was a burden, not a gift. It came with a lifetime of inescapable public duty, media intrusion, and a set of expectations that left little room for personal ambition or failure. She wanted her son to have the freedom to choose his own career, to make his own mistakes, and to live a life that was not predetermined from the moment of his birth. It was a radical concept for a family whose entire existence was predicated on the accident of birthright. The decision created a unique constitutional curiosity. Peter Phillips was a commoner who stood in the line of succession. He was and remains in the direct line to the throne, but without any of the rank or status that traditionally accompanied it. He would be expected at major state occasions, but he would not be expected to carry out public duties. He was an insider with the official status of an outsider. The public reaction was a mixture of surprise and admiration. For many, it was seen as a refreshingly down-to-earth move, a sign that the royal family was capable of evolving. It reinforced Anne's image as the sensible modern princess. But within the palace walls, the decision set a precedent that would have long-lasting consequences, creating a new, undefined category of royal, one that would have to navigate the perks of proximity to the throne without the financial support or the clear rulebook that came with a formal role. The experiment had begun, and Peter Phillips was its unknowing subject. Peter's childhood was a life of carefully managed contradictions. He grew up at Gatcombe Park, a magnificent 700-acre country estate in Gloucestershire. His days were spent riding ponies, playing in the fields, and spending holidays at the Queen's private estates of Balmoral and Sandringham. His playmates were his cousins, the future King William and the spare Prince Harry. By any measure, it was an upbringing of immense privilege, yet his mother worked tirelessly to instill a sense of normalcy. Gatcombe was not run like a palace, but as a working farm and a world-class equestrian center. Peter and his sister Zara, who was born in 1981, were raised not as delicate royals, but as tough outdoorsy kids. They were taught to muck out stables, to respect their elders, and to understand that their last name did not grant them a free pass in life. His relationship with his cousins was close, but underscored by their different destinies. He was the older, often protective cousin, but he watched as William and Harry were prepared for lives of public service, while his own path remained intentionally undefined. This created a subtle but significant sense of being both a part of the family's inner circle and simultaneously separate from it. This sense of separation was amplified by the very public breakdown of his parents' marriage. The fairy tale of the princess and the dashing cavalry officer crumbled under the weight of their different personalities, and ultimately his father's infidelity. In 1991, the family was rocked by a paternity suit from a New Zealand art teacher named Heather Tonkin, who proved that Mark Phillips was the father of her daughter, Felicity. The scandal was a tabloid firestorm. Anne and Mark separated soon after, and their divorce was finalized in 1992. For a teenage Peter, the divorce was a deeply painful and destabilizing event. The public nature of the scandal was humiliating, and it shattered the idyllic image of his family life. The experience is said to have made him even more fiercely private and deeply protective of his sister, Zara. They leaned on each other for support, forging an incredibly close bond that has been a defining feature of their adult lives. The revelation of a half-sister, and later another, Stephanie, born from his father's second marriage, added another layer of complexity to his family life. It was a harsh, early lesson in the painful realities that can lie behind a public facade. Peter's education was designed to build character and resilience. He was sent to Gordonstoun, a remote and famously Spartan boarding school on the coast of Scotland. It was the same school that had educated his grandfather, Prince Philip, and his uncle, Prince Charles. While Charles had famously loathed his time there, describing it as colditz and kilts, Peter, like his grandfather, thrived in the school's rugged, physically demanding environment. Gordonstoun's ethos was built on pushing its students to their limits through outdoor expeditions, cold morning showers, and a rigorous sense of community service. It was the perfect environment for a boy raised with Princess Anne's no-nonsense values. He excelled, eventually being appointed guardian, the school's title for head boy, a significant leadership position that required the respect of both students and faculty. It was also at Gordonstoun that he found his sporting passion, rugby. He was a talented and physical player, a fixture on the school's first 15 team. In a fascinating and telling display of his unique identity, he chose to represent the Scottish schools team. While technically eligible, it was a subtle declaration of independence. He was not another English royal prince. He was Peter Phillips, a young man forging a path connected to his mother's Scottish titles and his Scottish schooling. After graduating, he took a gap year, a tradition for upper-class British students. But his was not a year of idle backpacking. He worked for Sports Entertainment Limited, SEL, in Sydney, a sports marketing and management company that would later become a huge part of his professional life. He also spent time working for Formula One legend, Sir Jackie Stewart's racing team. These experiences were more than just youthful adventures. They were the first building blocks of a professional career, a deliberate move to gain real-world experience far from the shadow of the palace. He went on to the University of Exeter, where he earned a degree in sports science, continuing to play high-level rugby for the university. By the time he graduated in 2000, the experiment seemed to be a complete success. He was a confident, well-educated, and ambitious young man with a clear passion for the business of sport. He had a university degree, a network of powerful contacts he had made on his own, and a world of opportunity before him. He was standing on the precipice of adulthood, ready to test the central hypothesis of his life. Could the Queen's grandson make it in the real world entirely on his own terms? The next decade would provide a complex and, at times, controversial answer. Graduating from university in the year 2000, Peter Phillips stood on a precipice unique in the history of the British monarchy. He was armed with a respectable degree, a network of powerful contacts, and a famous last name. Yet he was burdened by an unprecedented challenge. He had to get a job. Unlike his cousins, who would enter the military and a life of state-funded public service, Peter was now expected to make his own way in the world, to earn a salary, and to build a life entirely independent of the crown. The great experiment conceived by his mother was now entering its most critical phase. The next decade would see him dive headfirst into the glamorous, high-stakes worlds of professional sports and international finance. It would also bring him the great love of his life, a confident Canadian commoner who had no idea she was dating the Queen's grandson. This is the story of Peter's professional rise and his first marriage. It is a tale of ambition and romance, a period where he seemed to master the impossible balancing act required of him. He was the tightrope walker, carefully placing one foot in the corporate world and the other in the royal realm, striving to build a normal life on the most extraordinary of foundations. For a time, It seemed he would never put a foot wrong. Peter wasted no time in putting his sports science degree to use. Drawing on his passion for athletics and the connections he had made during his gap year, he stepped directly into the glamorous, fast-paced world of Formula One motor racing. His first job was with Jaguar Racing, working in corporate hospitality and marketing. It was the perfect entry point, a role where his natural charm and ease with people, honed through a lifetime of semi-royal encounters, were valuable assets. The world of F1 in the early 2000s was a dazzling spectacle of speed, technology, and immense corporate wealth. It was a global circus of billionaires, engineers, and celebrity drivers, and Peter navigated it with an understated confidence. He soon moved to a more substantial role at the legendary Williams F1 team, one of the giants of the sport. Here, he worked as a sponsorship accounts manager. This was no ceremonial position. It was a demanding corporate job. His responsibility was to manage the relationships with the massive multinational corporations, banks, tech companies, luxury brands that poured millions of pounds into the team in exchange for their logo being plastered on the cars. He was good at it. He was articulate, professional, and had an innate understanding of the world of high-stakes sports. But the unspoken question always lingered in the background. Was he there purely on merit, or was his famous name the key that unlocked these exclusive doors? The truth, most likely, lies somewhere in the middle. His connection to Sir Jackie Stewart undoubtedly helped him get his start, and the allure of his royal background certainly didn't hurt when dealing with status-conscious corporate clients. This was the fundamental dilemma of his professional life. To succeed, he had to leverage the very connections that his normal status was supposed to make irrelevant. He handled this conflict with discretion, keeping a low public profile and focusing on his work. He was not Peter, the Queen's grandson. He was Peter Phillips, a hard-working executive in the sports marketing industry. He was successfully building his own identity, but he was about to meet someone who would love him for the man he was without knowing a thing about the family he came from. The Montreal Grand Prix in 2003 was just another race weekend for Peter. He was there with the Williams team, busy managing sponsor events in the high-security paddock club. It was in this chaotic, high-energy environment that he was introduced to a bright, poised Canadian woman named Autumn Kelly. She was a management consultant from Montreal working in a corporate hospitality tent for a different company. The attraction was immediate. They struck up a conversation and were instantly drawn to each other. They spent the rest of the weekend talking, laughing, and discovering a powerful connection. To Autumn, Peter was simply a charming, funny, and handsome Englishman who worked in Formula One. The subject of his family didn't come up. He was just Peter. It was only several weeks later, back at her home in Montreal, that the truth was revealed in the most surreal way possible. Autumn was watching television with her mother when a program about Prince William's 21st birthday came on. Suddenly, there on the screen, standing next to the future king, was the man she had been speaking to on the phone every day. Her mother recognized him instantly. "Oh, Autumn," she said, "what have you gotten yourself into?" The revelation that she was dating a member of the British royal family was a profound shock. But by then, their bond was already too strong to be broken by the discovery of his lineage. She had fallen for the man, not for any title or status. This authenticity became the bedrock of their relationship. After a period of long-distance dating, Autumn made the life-changing decision to move to the UK to be with him, taking a job as a personal assistant to the broadcaster Sir Michael Parkinson. She was introduced to the Queen and the rest of the family at Balmoral and was quickly embraced for her down-to-earth nature and quiet confidence. In 2005, Peter made a significant career change, leaving the glamour of Formula One for the more buttoned-down world of international finance. He took a position with the Royal Bank of Scotland, RBS, initially working in their Edinburgh headquarters on their sports sponsorship programs, which included the Williams F1 team. This move was seen as a step towards a more serious and stable corporate career, away from the transient world of motor racing. His relationship with Autumn continued to deepen, and in July 2007 the palace officially announced their engagement. The news was greeted with warmth by the British public. Autumn was seen as another welcome commoner joining the royal fold, much like Sophie Rhys-Jones, who had married Prince Edward. She was professional, independent, and clearly in love with Peter for the right reasons. But their engagement brought a fascinating and little understood historical wrinkle to the forefront. Autumn had been raised Roman Catholic. According to the ancient and arcane Act of Settlement of 1701, a law designed to secure the Protestant succession, anyone in the line to the throne who married a Roman Catholic would be automatically removed from the line of succession. For Peter, who was 11th in line at the time, to marry Autumn as a Catholic would mean forfeiting his birthright. In a move that demonstrated her deep commitment to him and their future, Autumn chose to be received into the Church of England. The conversion, which took place in April 2008, was a private affair, but it was a constitutionally significant one. It was a stark reminder that even in the 21st century, the modern royal family was still bound by centuries-old laws. It was a quiet sacrifice that ensured Peter would keep his place in line and that their future children would be granted theirs. On May 17, 2008, Peter Phillips and Autumn Kelly were married at St. George's Chapel in Windsor Castle, the same hallowed venue where Prince Harry and Meghan Markle would later wed. It was a magnificent royal occasion. 300 guests, including the Queen, Prince Philip, and a host of senior royals were in attendance. Autumn looked radiant in a saucy Holford gown, and Peter wore a traditional mourning suit. His sister Zara was a bridesmaid. The wedding was a joyous celebration, a seemingly perfect union of the old world and the new. Shortly after their wedding, the couple made a bold and surprising move. Peter accepted a new position with RBS, heading up their sports sponsorship activities in Asia. They packed their bags and relocated to Hong Kong. This move was significant for several reasons. Professionally, it was a major step up for Peter, placing him in one of the world's most dynamic financial centers. Personally, it offered them a precious opportunity, a degree of anonymity that would have been impossible in the UK. In the bustling, expatriate-heavy metropolis of Hong Kong, they could live the life of a normal professional married couple. They could go to dinner, shop for groceries, and walk down the street without the constant glare of the British paparazzi. It was in many ways the ultimate fulfillment of the normal life experiment. He had a challenging international career, a loving wife, and the freedom to live without the daily pressures of being the Queen's grandson. From the outside, Peter Phillips seemed to have mastered the tightrope. He had successfully built a career on his own terms, found a partner who loved him for himself, and created a life of independence on the other side of the world. He had honored his family's traditions while forging a modern path. The experiment appeared to be a resounding success, but a storm was gathering on the horizon as the happy couple's first major decision as husband and wife was about to erupt into a scandal that would tarnish his carefully crafted image and expose the inherent perils of his unique position. As Peter and Autumn embarked on their new life in Hong Kong, they seemed to have achieved the impossible. But the tightrope he walked was thinner than it appeared. The need to earn a living was about to collide with the unspoken code of the monarchy, leading to damaging scandals, a moment of glorious redemption, and the slow, painful unraveling of a marriage that had once seemed like a modern fairy tale. Peter was about to learn the true price of his royal privilege. The fairy tale wedding at St. George's Chapel was still fresh in the public's memory when the first major scandal of Peter's life erupted. Just days after the ceremony, the glossy pages of Hello magazine hit the newsstands, featuring a staggering 59-page exclusive spread filled with intimate photographs from the wedding and reception. The headline boasted of an inside look at the royal event. It soon emerged that the couple had been paid a reported £500,000 for the privilege. The backlash was immediate and brutal. The British press, who had been largely kept at a distance during the wedding, were apoplectic. They decried the deal as a crass and vulgar act of cashing in, accusing Peter of selling his family's prestige for a hefty paycheck. The move was seen as a grave error of judgment, blurring the sacred line between a private royal family event and a commercial transaction. Inside the palace, the reaction was reportedly one of fury and dismay. The Queen, who had graciously hosted the wedding, was said to be deeply disappointed. For an institution that relies on an almost mystical sense of dignity and detachment, the Hello deal was a profound embarrassment. It cheapened the brand. The long-term consequences were significant. The Queen is said to have personally intervened, instituting a firm ban on any such deals for future royal weddings. This decision would directly impact the media arrangements for the wedding of Prince William and Kate Middleton 3 years later, forcing them to adopt a much more controlled and less commercial approach. For Peter and Autumn, who had likely seen the deal as a pragmatic way to fund their new life in Hong Kong, the scandal was a harsh lesson in the unique burdens of their position. Peter was forced to issue a public apology, but the damage was done. The image of the discreet, hard-working grandson was tarnished. For the first time, he was seen not as a trailblazer, but as a royal who was willing to trade his proximity to the throne for cash. It was the first major crack in his carefully constructed public persona. Despite the controversy, the years in Hong Kong were a period of immense personal joy for the couple. Far from the UK media, they settled into a life of relative normalcy. In December 2010, their first child, Savannah Ann Kathleen, was born. Her birth was a historic moment. She was Queen Elizabeth II's first great-grandchild, and her christening was attended by the Queen herself. In March 2012, their second daughter, Isla Elizabeth, was born, her middle name a clear tribute to her famous great-grandmother. Peter embraced fatherhood with a natural hands-on devotion. For a man who had experienced the pain of a broken home, creating a stable and loving family was of paramount importance. He was a doting and present father, a constant in his daughters' lives. Around 2012, with 2 young children, the couple made the decision to move back to the United Kingdom. The pull of family was strong, and they wanted their daughters to grow up surrounded by their relatives. They settled not in London, but back in Gloucestershire, on his mother's Gatcombe Park estate. This move placed them firmly back within the royal fold, a constant presence at family gatherings and holidays. They were a picture of domestic bliss, the Hello scandal, a seemingly distant memory. Peter was now a family man, and he was about to embark on the most successful professional chapter of his life. Upon his return to the UK, Peter took up a new role as the managing director of the British division of his old firm, Sports Entertainment Limited, SEL, UK. He spent the next few years quietly and successfully building the business, organizing major sporting events, and proving himself to be a capable and effective executive. Then, in 2016, came the opportunity for a grand and public redemption. To celebrate his grandmother, the Queen's 90th birthday, a massive national event was planned, the Patrons' Lunch. The idea was to honor the Queen's patronage of over 600 charities and organizations. The centerpiece was to be a colossal picnic-style lunch for 10,000 guests, held on the Mall, the iconic boulevard leading to Buckingham Palace. It was an event of immense logistical complexity and national significance, and the man chosen to organize it was Peter Phillips. It was the perfect synthesis of his two worlds. He was the Queen's grandson, and trusted insider who could navigate the complex protocols of a major royal event. But he was also an experienced events manager with a proven track record in the commercial world. He threw himself into the project with a relentless work ethic. He managed the budgets, the security, the ticketing, and the entertainment. The event, held in June 2016, was a spectacular success. Despite pouring rain, the atmosphere was jubilant. The images of the royal family mingling with the crowds and the sheer scale of the patriotic celebration were broadcast around the world. For Peter, it was a moment of immense personal and professional triumph. He was widely praised for his organizational genius, and in a detail that surely pleased his famously frugal mother, for managing the event's complex budget with remarkable efficiency. The Patrons' Lunch rehabilitated his public image. He was no longer seen as the man who sold his wedding photos, but as the capable professional grandson who had delivered a flawless tribute to his beloved grandmother. He had proven that his royal connection, when used in service to the crown rather than for personal profit, could be a powerful force for good. He had, it seemed, finally found the perfect balance on the tightrope. The redemption, however, was short-lived. In January 2020, just as the royal family was being rocked by the departure of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, a new scandal erupted around Peter. A series of television commercials appeared on Chinese television featuring the Queen's grandson. In the ads for Bright Food, a state-owned dairy company, Peter was seen in a luxurious, stately home, being served a glass of milk on a silver tray by a butler. He spoke of the values of family and praised the quality of the product, famously stating, "I was brought up on Jersey milk." The criticism was even more severe than it had been for the Hello deal. Coming at a time of intense sensitivity around royals cashing in, the ad was seen as a stunningly tone-deaf act of commercial exploitation. The British press was merciless, calling him the patron saint of shamelessness and accusing him of using his royal status to enrich himself in the most blatant way possible. He was once again the royal for sale. This public humiliation was almost immediately compounded by a deep private sorrow. Just a few weeks later, in February 2020, Buckingham Palace was forced to confirm the shocking news that Peter and Autumn had separated the previous year. The seemingly perfect marriage that had begun with such promise at Windsor was over after 13 years. The public was stunned. The couple released a statement emphasizing that the split was amicable and that their primary focus was the joint upbringing of their wonderful daughters. But behind the dignified statement was the painful reality of a family falling apart. In a rare interview, Peter would later admit it was a difficult time. For a man who prized family stability above all else, the divorce was a profound personal failure, made all the more painful by the intense and unavoidable glare of the public spotlight. By the start of 2020, Peter Phillips had hit a new low. His professional reputation was once again in tatters, and his family life, which had been his anchor, was shattered. The tightrope walker had fallen, and his two worlds had collided in the most public and painful way imaginable. To fall from a tightrope is a terrifying public event. But the story of Peter Phillips was never about achieving perfection. It has always been about resilience. The years that followed this public and private low point would not be a story of another dramatic comeback, but something quieter and more profound. It would be a story of recovery, of devoted fatherhood, and of a quiet maturation that would see the tightrope walker become a steady helmsman, charting his own course while serving as an anchor for his family. In the painful aftermath of their divorce, which was finalized in 2021, Peter and Autumn made a decision that earned them widespread respect. They put their children first. In a remarkably amicable arrangement, Autumn and her two daughters, Savannah and Idla, remained living on the Gatcombe Park estate, just a short distance from Peter. There were no custody battles, no public acrimony. Instead, they created a stable and supportive environment dedicated to co-parenting their children with love and unity. Peter embraced his new role as a single father with a quiet, unwavering devotion. He was now the most visible and hands-on father in the royal family. He was seen at school events, horse trials, and most notably at major royal gatherings, with his daughters always by his side. At the Easter Sunday service at Windsor in 2023, the image of him holding his daughter's hands, a confident and caring paternal figure, was a powerful symbol of his new reality. This focus on his children became his personal redemption. It stripped away the image of the commercial royal and replaced it with something far more relatable and admirable, that of a dedicated father navigating the complexities of a modern blended family. His daughters remained his clear priority, the undisputed center of his world. As he rebuilt his life, Peter slowly began to step back into the public eye with new partners. His relationship with Lindsay Wallace, a friend from his sister Zara's school days, lasted for 3 years and marked his return to a sense of personal normalcy. Their public debut at the Epsom Derby in 2022, where they were seen laughing with his mother, Princess Anne, was a signal that he was ready to move on. After their amicable split in 2024, Peter found a new and profound happiness. In the summer of that year, he began dating Harriet Sperling. Their relationship marked a new chapter of maturity and stability. Harriet was not from the world of aristocracy or corporate glamour. She was a dedicated NHS pediatric nurse and a freelance writer, a single mother herself. She represented the grounded, normal world that Peter had always been drawn to. He introduced her to his life with a caution born of experience. She was quietly introduced to King Charles and Queen Camilla at Balmoral, a gentle integration into the family far from the glare of the cameras. The lessons from his past had clearly been learned. After their amicable split in early 2024, Peter found new happiness. In the summer of that year, he began dating Harriet Sperling, a dedicated NHS pediatric nurse and freelance writer. Their relationship marked a new chapter of maturity and stability, as Harriet represented the grounded, normal world that Peter had always been drawn to. She was quietly introduced to senior members of the royal family at Balmoral, a gentle integration that suggested he had learned from the intense public glare of the past. He was building a new life, this time with a caution born of experience, finally finding a personal peace that had long eluded him. Parallel to his personal recovery, Peter also continued his professional life with a new maturity. The embarrassing missteps of the past had taught him a harsh but valuable lesson. His career in the 2020s has been marked by a shift towards more strategic and less controversial business ventures. As managing director of SEL UK, he has continued to focus on large-scale event management and sports marketing, leveraging his expertise in a way that is less public-facing than consumer endorsements. He has learned to navigate the treacherous waters where commerce and crown meet, focusing on a career path that provides for his family without sacrificing his dignity or embarrassing the institution he is a part of. This new role as a helmsman in the maritime tech world symbolizes his professional maturation. He is still using his connections and his reputation to build a business, but he is doing so in a smarter, more subtle way. He has learned to navigate the treacherous waters where commerce and crown meet, charting a course that provides for his family without sacrificing his dignity or embarrassing the institution. As King Charles III continues to shape his vision of a slimmed-down monarchy, the role of extended family members like Peter Phillips has become both less formal and more crucial. He holds no official position and receives no public money, yet he remains an indispensable part of the family fabric. In times of crisis and celebration, he is a figure of quiet strength and continuity. He stood a solemn vigil at the coffins of both his grandparents, Prince Philip and Queen Elizabeth II, a grandson mourning alongside a nation. In moments of family turmoil, such as the health scare his mother, Princess Anne, suffered in the summer of 2024, he is a supportive and steady presence. At great state occasions, like the coronation, his presence in the congregation is a symbol of the wider family's unwavering support for the new monarch. He is not a senior working royal, but he is a senior and respected member of the family. He is the anchor that connects the official, public-facing monarchy to the private, sprawling family behind it. He is the big cousin, the devoted son, the reliable presence who can be counted on when it matters most. In the end, Peter Phillips' story is a fascinating study in identity. The great experiment his mother began in 1977 did not grant him a completely normal life. The inescapable gravity of his birthright made that impossible. But it did give him something more valuable, a choice and the freedom to learn from his mistakes. His life has been a constant balancing act, and for many years he was the unsteady tightrope walker. But the man he is today is someone different. He is a devoted father who successfully navigated a difficult divorce with grace. He is a man building a new private life with a partner who shares his grounded values. He is a businessman who has learned from public failure to build a more discreet career. He is no longer defined as the prince who wasn't, or the royal for sale. He is simply Peter Phillips, a man who has found a comfortable and dignified place that is uniquely his own, a quiet, steadfast anchor for the family he loves. The experiment, with all its trials and tribulations, has ultimately been a success.